everybody. Welcome to our video for today. Today we're going to be talking about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So we're going to introduce you to the quadratic formula. We're going to talk about how we can use it to solve quadratic equations. So we would use the quadratic formula when we cannot factor. So if we are given some sort of quadratic equation, a trinomial that is prime, meaning it's not factorable, we are going to use the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula. It's scary looking. It's a bit of a doozy. This is where in the video I would love to pause and then play for you one of my favorite quadratic formula songs. Unfortunately, I tried to do that. It did not go well in terms of the technology, so I'm going to link it below. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. It looks scary. It is not. All we're going to have to do is substitute numbers in for a, b, and c. These are our steps, and then we'll watch two examples, or we'll do two examples. So the first step is to be sure that our equation is in standard form. For quadratic, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. The second step is to make sure the equation equals 0. If it equals anything else, the quadratic formula will not work. After that, we're going to identify a, b, and c and plug them into the quadratic formula. Then we're going to simplify. As a reminder, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And the song I'm going to link to has that to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, so it makes it really easy to remember. So here's our trinomial that we want to factor. 6x squared plus 7x plus 2 equals 0. Well, the first thing that we are going to do is identify a, b, and c. So a is our first coefficient, b is our second coefficient, and c is our third coefficient. 6, 7, 2. Then we're going to sub into the quadratic formula. So we have x equals negative b, so that would be negative 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 7 squared, minus 4 times a times c, 6 times 2, over 2a. A is 6, so that would be 2 times 6. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 6 times 2, all over 2 times 6. Now we need to use order of operations to help us simplify. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to simplify everything that is underneath the square root symbol as well as the multiplication on the bottom. So 7 squared is 49. 4 times 6 times 2 is 48, and 2 times 6 is 12. Then we're going to subtract what is under the square root sign. 49 minus 48 is 1. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 12. Well, the square root of 1 is 1. So that brings us to our next step. Now we are going to use this plus or minus to separate our equation into two equations. Negative 7 plus 1 and negative 7 minus 1. I'll move myself over here. So negative 7 plus 1 divided by 12 is the same as negative 6 over 12, which equals negative 0.5. Negative 7 minus 1 over 12 is the same as negative 8 over 12, which equals negative 0.75. So by applying the quadratic formula, we were able to discover that the two possible values for x that would make the equation true are negative 0.5 and negative 0.75. Okay, let's look at another example. Here we have 2p squared equals 7p minus 3. This is not already in standard form. So we need to move 7p and negative 3 to the correct side of the equation, so it can also be set equal to 0. We're going to do that by subtracting 7p from both sides and adding 3 to both sides of the equal sign. And that gives us 2p squared minus 7p plus 3 equals 0. Now I'm going to identify a, b, and c so I know what to substitute into my formula. A is 2, b is negative 7, and c is 3. Once I know those numbers, I'm going to substitute them into the formula. So x equals negative b. Here, b was already negative, so when we negative and negative, it becomes positive, positive 7. And also, I realize this is a p and not an x, but the formula works the exact same way no matter what your variable is. So p equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 7 squared, minus 4ac. A is 2, c is 3, all over 2a. A is 2. Once we do the multiplication and squaring, we end up with 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus 24 over 4. Remember that when we square a negative, it always becomes positive. So negative 7 squared is positive 49. 4 times 2 times 3 is 24, and 2 times 2 is 4. Now we'll subtract what's under the square root. So 49 minus 24 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. And now we can't simplify anymore without making two separate equations. So the first equation will be 7 plus 5 over 4, which is the same as 12 over 4, or 3. The next equation will be 7 minus 5 over 4, which is the same as 2 over 4, or 0.5. So the two values that p could possibly be are 3 and 0.5. I hope this video was helpful. Feel free to comment if you have any questions, and I'll be linking a really helpful song to help you remember the quadratic formula right below. Have a great day.